That's fine.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
All right. Hello. I wanted to go ahead and get just a few quick housekeeping kinds of things out of the way. If you are here for a class for extra credit, for most of the classes there will be a sign up in the back rooms after the talk. For Dr. Wan's, it will be up here for you to sign up, and if you're for my class, you should know better. There's no sign up. I want a paper. If you are here for CEU credits, see her afterwards. She'll still be sitting there, hopefully. So this should take about 45 or 50 minutes for his actual talk, and then there's going to be a question and answer period. Please don't leave until after the question and answer period. It's in bad form. So if you would just be polite, I know you can do an hour. I know it's a Monday, and I appreciate you all being here. Lastly, I would like to thank Dr. Brummer. Without him, none of this would be possible. So if you guys would help me thank that. All right, everybody can hear me okay? Yeah, okay. You should don't have problems. So tonight, our guest speaker is wonderful, and he is coming from the University of Wisconsin in Green Bay. He is an outstanding scholar. He has authored or co-authored over 16 different books. He has published in all of the major American Psychological Association journals. He does research in sexism and clothing, which is super fascinating if you ever get a chance to read any of it. He also does health psychology and has a new book in that coming out. And more pertaining to tonight, he also studies how to improve learning, so especially applied for students in the classroom and also really applicable for teachers. He's so good at teaching, in fact, he was the president of Division II of APA, which means the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. He has also recently won the Charles L. Brewer Award for Distinguishing Career in Teaching Award last year. So all in all, he's an amazing teacher, and I know we can really learn, and I'm really actually happy to be able to call him a friend. So without further ado, Dr. Regan Gurung.
All right, wow, this is still super loud, but we'll give it a shot. Yeah, if you can go even softer, that'll be super. All right, how's people doing? I know it's hot in front. Wow, I like that. Yes, it is hot in here. Thank you so much for coming out. It's an absolute thrill to be down here in Kentucky. It's actually straight due south from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I mistakenly thought I'd be in a different time zone because I thought Kentucky, it's got to be someplace different, but it's not. And here I am. So I have a thrill ride of a 45-minute set for you. And I was going to go longer, but then I heard it's only 45 minutes, so don't worry, I will stick to 45 minutes. But here's the deal, right? Here's the cool thing. There's a whole bunch of science out there about how we can learn better. But unfortunately, most of us who teach don't pay as much attention to it. And what I wanted to do today is give a reminder to all of us about one of those things that we can do to actually learn better. Right? My goal, quite simply, is to make sure that we faculty and you students have less of that. All right? I mean, man, let me tell you, when you look out and you see something like that, it is the most disheartening thing as a faculty member. And I'm a social psychologist, and for those of you who know about the different types of psychology, the neat thing about being a social psychologist is we are very good at coming up with different attributions or different reasons why somebody could be looking like that. So no, it's not because we're boring, but maybe that person didn't sleep well the night before. See, psychology, very, very useful, right? So my goal is to have fewer people like that and a lot more people really being excited about classes, being excited about their research, or talking about research. And okay, that's maybe asking for that level of excitement is a little much, but I think it's possible, all right? But I think it's possible if we take the science and use it right. Because the reality is, there's a lot of cool stuff to learn, especially in psychology. But I think sometimes the way we are, and I'll use the word, forced to do it, is not optimal. All right? So I'm going to speak to both the faculty in the room and the students in the room, and collectively, all right, collectively, we're going to come up with some really cool ways to do learning better. All right? And why is learning better, or just learning in general better? Well, there's some pretty clear-cut reasons that go across disciplinary boundaries. Some of you may have seen this study. All right, anybody seen this study? It came out in the last month or so. 2/3 of millennials sleep nude. Now, A, I'm not going to ask you if you're a millennial. B, I'm not going to ask you if you sleep nude. C, I'm not going to tell you how I sleep, right? But quite well, actually. I sleep quite well. But when you see studies like this, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, I am betting, I'm hoping that somebody in this room saw this and shared it with a friend. Because it's not just how people sleep, but interestingly enough, apparently according to this article, how you sleep is also related to your likelihood of being in a relationship, is also related to your likelihood of enjoying things that people in relationships particularly enjoy. Right? But before we get carried away with all that kind of stuff, we got to know, do we pay this any attention? And the problem in this day and age, with phones in our pockets, and in some of your cases in your laps right now, okay, I am super glad that it's been 3 minutes and nobody's texted yet, or at least that I can see, oh yeah, those guys in the back. Okay, but come on, you know? That's why you sat there, right? You know, I'm kidding, right? But here's the bigger issue. You and I are surrounded in a world where there's a lot of, to use a phrase, fake news. All right? And there's actual fake news, and there are facts. I'm not talking about factual stuff, but there's news that's made up. And whether it's Russian hackers or trolls or whatever, there's a lot of stuff that you and I see on social media that is just not accurate. And what's really important, regardless of what class you're in, but especially if you're in psychology, one of the many cool things about psychological science is that it gives you the tools to look at the stuff that you see on social media and ask yourself, should I pay attention to this? All right? And like this headline says, just if you can check facts, that's not going to stop you from fake news. There's a lot more than that. And when we talk about this whole enterprise of college, the bigger question is, how do we improve this quality of what you guys are paying money for? Okay? What we guys are paid money to deliver. And that's a huge question. How do we improve the quality of higher education? And I'm going to actually start at a very 30,000-foot level, and then I'm going to get nice and down and specific. And before we are done, I'm going to give you guys ways that you can change your studying literally the moment you leave here, and for those of you doing homework right now, as you're doing your homework right now. Okay? So that's the plan. And when I talk about quality, I'm going to introduce, and if you read the flyers, I'm going to introduce a new metaphor for thinking about it. When I think about quality, I've been teaching for a really long time. The introduction nicely ignored how many years I've been doing this, right? A lot, all right? I've been at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay for 20 years, right? I spent a lot of time in other teaching places before that. And over all these years, I have noticed that far too often sometimes instructors just try to give you content. But that's not what learning is about, right? And when we truly talk about learning in higher education, I want all of us here, not just the faculty, but I want all of us here to think, what is actual learning? When you guys out there think about learning, right? Let's see, how do you know whether you've learned something? How do you know whether you've learned something? Yeah, how do you know whether you've learned something? You can tell it back to me. Give me another way you know you've learned something. Explain it to somebody. What's the most common measure? One quick little measure that you look at and you go, I've learned something. What is it?
If you actually do what you learn.
Okay, well that's great. Wow, you can do what you can, but more oftenly, there aren't opportunities to see if you can do what you've learned. What's the simplest way before you even have a chance to do it? What is it? You've taken a class. How do you know how well you've done in the class? Your grades, right? And that answer that we came to after much prodding, right, is actually, unfortunately, what 95+% of colleges and universities use to know whether you've learned something. Now, my big question is that really learning? Okay, is that grade really learning? It's great if you can show whether you can do something or not. But when I talk about quality learning, I'm going to give you a different way to think about learning. And I'm going to use the analogy of the pearl. Anybody here knows how a pearl is made? Nutshell. How is a pearl made? Yeah, go ahead. Batman.
A piece of sediment or something else gets in like a clam or oyster shell.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. A piece of sediment or something gets in a shell, it starts building. And there you go. When you take a look at the formation of a pearl, in a nutshell, here's what happens, right? Some foreign body, some irritant irritates the pearl, right? The pearl starts secreting layers around it. The oyster starts secreting layers around that foreign body, and pretty soon you have a cool pearl. But think about what started the development of that pearl. Some freaking irritant. A foreign body that irritated that oyster. You may think, hey, I hate being irritated. I hate being irritated. But you know what? If it wasn't for that irritation, there would be no pearl. I think you can already nudge towards how I'm going to put this to learning. Okay? Let me give you a story. I was walking back from class one day, and there were two students in front of me. And one turned to the other and said, why the heck does that person do all that active learning crap? Why doesn't he just lecture? And I know it wasn't my class. Pretty sure. I know the face of everybody in my class. But right there, here were two students going, I just want to sit back and get the PowerPoints of what I need to learn, and then I will put it on the test, and that's learning. What's all this doing stuff with it? But folks, that us faculty making you do stuff with content, that's the irritant. All right? And when you have that irritant, that is actually where the quality of your learning is going to be way different. So to map this, right, instead of a pearl, let's look at learning. And you'll notice some really cool parallels, right? That foreign body is the new ideas. You are here on this campus at Murray State University to learn stuff. And although it would be so easy for that to just translate into your GPA, the reality is I hope you actually want to learn stuff. But what does that mean, right? And these new ideas make you think, right? We've got to realize that you guys are sitting here with prior knowledge. That shell that oyster has, you haven't come here, all blank slates. Right? You've come here with some prior knowledge. And then we give you these new ideas, and you've got to do something with it. And then there's that intellectual engagement, and the hope is that that intellectual engagement leads to this lifelong learning. So the whole idea here is, right off the bat, if some of you are sitting here and you go, oh yeah, that class is really irritating. It makes me think. Good news, people. Good news. You may actually be getting more out of it than you realized. And to give you a sneak preview of what I'm talking about with lifelong learning, that class that irritated you into thinking is probably going to give you learning that you are going to hang on to way longer than if you didn't get that irritation. That's the thing to keep in mind. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not just making excuses for the faculty here so that they can pester you, right? And you're going, oh, I know, you're just saying that for the faculty so they can pester. No, that's the way to go about it. So, to give you a better sense of this and really unpack it for you, I'm going to divide the remaining 40 or so minutes into 3 parts, okay? I'm going to say a little bit more about what I mean with quality lifelong learning, all right? A little bit more about what this quality lifelong learning is. Then, good news, folks, right here, right now, in 5 minutes, I'm going to summarize for you 40 plus years of research on what influences learning. Okay, so you can think about it and map it onto your own lives, right? What influences learning? Let's look at what those factors, and then the money aspect of this talk, right? You'll get something or your money back, okay, part of your tuition, is actual strategies, all right? So as promised, before you leave, you're going to get some strategies to actually help you study. And if you can't see the small print from the back, I love that. Studying, notice how they conveniently put dying at the end of this word, right? Never knew that about studying. Indeed, dying is in there. Crazy. Okay? All right, people ready? 3 parts. You up for it? Yeah, you're hanging on? All right, cool. Let's go. Right? So here's the thing. Pearls vary. Okay, they vary. And actually, so does learning. All right? So does learning. And when we think about learning, it's sort of fascinating when you take a look at how different folks have different interpretations or expectations for learning. For example, you can ask faculty what they want, and I'm not going to ask the faculty here, there's tons of research on it. And when you ask faculty, what do you want? What do you want your students to do? Here are some of the words that come up. They say, we want our students to be transformed, we want them to grow, we want to inspire learning, we want the learning to be significant. We want it to be high impact. And if you're wondering, gosh, those are cool words, I want some of that. Good news, for every one of those buzzwords, there's a book. Okay? Transforming, high impact. It's there. Okay, it's there. But you may go, who cares what faculty want? Well, you should care, but hey, right now, let's move on, right? That's what faculty want. That's what research shows in higher education. If you've heard about deans and provosts and presidents, these are the books they read. Okay, I'm not kidding. These are the books they read. And then they read it and make us faculty read it. Okay, true story. And then they make us faculty read it and they say, do this stuff. I read the stuff in the book, do it, okay? But what about you guys? What do students want out of college? And again, here there's research, but tell me, what do you think students want? A degree, right? What else do students want? You guys are students, what do you want? You want a job, what do you want? To learn stuff, that's nice, right? Yeah, that's super. What else? Anything else? What else do you think students want?
Money.
Career, money, okay, money, show me the money, right? Yeah. And here's the funky thing, you know? I will admit, it's not just because I've been teaching for 20 years, it has been a heck of a long time since I was in college. And so I did some reading. That's what geeks do, you do some reading, right? And I did some reading, and there's some really cool books out there to try and tell you what students want. And faculty, you may be surprised by this, but when you actually do national surveys of students and ask them, what do you want? You see some of that, the money and the jobs and things like that. But you know something that comes up over and over again? Many students who go to college want to make the friends that will last a lifetime. Okay? They want the social connections. They want to build social connections. And something that every faculty member should hear about is when graduating students are asked, what contributed to your success? What comes up most frequently is a mentor who was there for me. A champion who I could talk to. Okay, that's the stuff. As you sit there, and if you're not a faculty member, if you're a student, I hope you have a person that you can talk to. Okay? I've met a lot of the folks here who definitely seem like good people you can talk to. But whatever your major, find that mentor, find that champion, because that can make the difference in your college education. Okay? I know people also like the dirt. You want some dirt on college? Read this book. Campus Confidential. All right? Have your parents buy it for you. Right? Campus Confidential. How college works or doesn't for professors, parents, and students. And if anybody who doesn't know how college works or what's happening in higher education, but you're curious, great book to check out. So that's what faculty want. That's what students want. A lot of you said jobs and get a job and make money. Well, let's see what employers want. You know what employers want? Employers want you to have knowledge and skills and abilities. Research was done on the 500 companies in the Fortune 500, and these management teams were asked, what do you want in students graduating from college? This is what they said. Okay? These are the top 5 skills that Fortune 500 companies said they want to see in graduating seniors. Yeah. Take a look. Listening skills, right? The willingness to learn. Somebody in the back, that's what you want. You want it in college. It's up there. That's what they want. Notice what's not on there. Friends. Content. We want them to know all this content. And that's more of a jab at the faculty. Okay? Many of us faculty, we care so much about content, we forget about the learning. Okay? But when you look at what employers want, they want you guys to have these skills. Do you guys know it? Well, I know I didn't ask you, but some research did ask a whole group of students around the country. And students were pretty knowledgeable. Okay? This is what students said they thought employers want. And you'll see a lot of similarities with this. Control one's temper. Okay. You guys have anger problems? Okay. Apparently, a lot of students think that employers want them to control their anger. Don't get me wrong, that's a good thing. But the fact that it made it to the top 5 is somewhat surprising. Okay? But notice, what faculty want and what students want and what employers want is not always the same thing. All right? So it really brings us back to then, so what is quality learning? I can tell you some things that quality learning is not. Quality learning is not just memorization. Okay? There's something in the field of education, there's something called Bloom's taxonomy. And it was recently revised. And basically, according to Bloom, these are all the levels that you can go through with knowledge. You can remember it or understand it, apply it, and many of you said apply your knowledge, that's super. But then you should be able to analyze it, and at the very top is create. And according to Bloom, you've really learned when you can create stuff. Okay, when you can evaluate stuff, when you can read that social media piece and go, should I pay attention to this? Right? That study on 2/3 of millennials sleeping in the nude, was it done in a way that I should pay attention to? Right? And what does it mean? Right? But far too often in college, students and faculty tend to focus down here. Okay? If you've ever taken a multiple choice exam, that's testing your remembering and maybe your understanding. And those faculty who write really good multiple choice questions can get an application and analyze and evaluate. It's very difficult to get to create in a multiple choice test. Okay? Very difficult. But that's what learning really is. It's not just memorization. That's way at the bottom. It's way at the bottom. And why should we pay less attention to pure memorization? Because the reality is, when you take a look at the data, people don't remember things that well. Colleague and I and friend did this study on the memorability of intro psych. Many of you are in Psych 180 right now. Here's some scary news. Ready, intro psych teachers?
Uh-oh.
So we did this study and we asked folks, we asked 3 different groups of people how much they remembered from class. We started with the obvious group, people who were in intro psych. And the people who were in intro psych, good news, did pretty well. This was the last exam in class. They got an average of 80%. Super, they've just taken the class. Good news. But what about some time later? Okay? We also had a sample of people who had taken intro psych 2 years ago. And we gave them exactly the same test. You think it got better or worse?
Worse.
Yeah? Yeah. Okay? It now dropped to under 60%. They basically failed. 2 years later. Now, if you've taken an intro class, you may know, just because you've taken an intro class, why should you remember it? Unless you've got exposure to it. Okay, great. We went to senior psychology majors. Alright? We went to senior psychology majors and gave them the same exam. Now mind you, these senior psychology majors, they had taken 4 years of psychology. Right? 4 years of psychology, all that cool intro psych stuff they were getting over and over and over and over again. Did they do better or worse?
Worse.
Oh, come on, man. Well, psych majors, they did better. Not by much. Okay? They as good as failed. They as good as failed. Long and short of the story, memorization, don't put so much of your time on just memorization. Do more with your learning. Do more with your learning. Here's another reason why. When I talk about cultivating long-term quality learning, I'm not talking about just performing on an exam. This data that I showed you, this is performance. This is not learning. This is performance. If you cram tonight, you will do really well on a multiple choice exam tomorrow. That's what this data shows. You cram tonight, you will do really well on a multiple choice exam tomorrow. But if you only cram, that learning is not going to extend any longer. And that's why when you think about learning as this relatively permanent change in comprehension. That's what you should be thinking about. As you sit there going, hey, am I learning anything at this place? Ask yourself, is there a relatively permanent change? Okay? And here's the good news and the bad news. And I'm a true scientist, I'm just going to give you the facts, even though it doesn't sound good for us faculty. Cramming works really well if all I'm testing you on is a multiple choice exam. Okay? But if you want to learn stuff beyond that week, to the next semester, to the next year, do more. What more? Hey, good news, there are 2 more parts coming up. Okay? But that's what I want you to keep in mind. Alright? Just that memorization, just that cramming, not enough. Okay? Scary enough? Oh yeah, you guys are scared, right? So, okay, what else then influences learning? Before I give you those great study tips, let's take a quick look at the factors that influence learning. Okay? Those are actually, surprising, believe it or not, different types of pearls, right? And when you look at pearls, fascinatingly enough, and I'm not into pearl cultivation, although I find it fascinating, there are all these different factors that make a difference. For pearls, something as predictable as pearls. And when I say predictable, there's an industry out there of cultivating pearls. Okay? Learning and us, human beings, we are way more different. Behavior is way more complex. Alright? So, even though pearl quality depends on those individual differences, that's the same thing for students. That's the same thing for human beings. Alright? There are a lot of individual difference factors that make a difference. So as you sit there, if I just stood up here and talked as if everybody is the same, ignoring those individual differences in personality and things like that, I'm not tapping into your full potential. Okay? So what helps is, what is really influencing learning? Well, here's my 40 years in one slide. When you take a look at years and years of research on learning, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the data shows. What you have on the screen in front of you are the biggest predictors of learning. There are more, but these are the biggest. For those of you who really like citations, those are the articles where all of this stuff came from. Okay, I'm not just making this stuff up. All right? Good part of critical thinking, make sure it's coming from someplace. Right? But take a look at this. Some of these are no-brainers. Your study habits. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Your ability, your effort. Here's a fact for you. If you told me what your high school GPA is, if you told me what your ACT score is, I could, with a high degree of certainty, predict what you will get in all your courses this semester. With high degree of certainty. There's some variance, okay? But that's how powerful your ability and your effort and the story so far is. But it's only a part of the action, okay? It's only a part of the action. Look at some of the others, right? Your motivation. Do you care? I have a lot of students who will come to class and will stop attending intro, and then we'll chat and they'll go, you know what? College is just not for me right now. And again, because I've been doing this so long, I actually see them when they come back for part 2. And they are different people. They go, remember me from intro psych? And I do. And they're like, yeah, I was not in the right place. I didn't have any motivation. I went and did some other stuff, and now I came back, and they do really well. Okay? So don't just look at somebody who's not doing well and go, they're not smart, or they're not this, or they're not that. There are a whole bunch of factors that could be playing a part. What their goals are, what their social support is, their support networks. Remember I said that find your champion, find your mentor? That can make the difference in your college education. You having a person there who will go to bat for you, who will sit down and talk to you when you have questions, that can make the world of a difference. That's social support. Having friends who can support you is great too. But finding a staff member or faculty member who you can go to, even better. Okay, and an important component to add as well. One more that's down here, self-efficacy. That's the belief that you can do it. All right? And there are many of us who are sitting here right now who may think we can't do it. Maybe it's because we've had bad experiences in high school. Maybe it's because we've had bad experiences with learning in the past. That may lead us to believe that we can't do it now. Okay? But there's something you can do to build that sense of being able to do it. All right? So, a lot of good research on there on what predicts learning. Look at your lives and think to yourself, which of these things do you need to work on? Are one of these things a place where you're not as strong as you can be? And then talk to somebody about it so you can build that. Because if you build that, then that learning is going to happen. Okay? There's just so much good data on learning. I want to give you one more piece that I just absolutely love before I go into the third section of what you can do. As something, when we talk about critical thinking, one clear thing about critical thinking is take a look at how people make claims. Right? And very often in a social media piece, for example, somebody will make a claim and it's not really based on real research. Sometimes somebody will do a study on 20 people and they'll make conclusions like it's the best study ever. Okay? No, that's not a good thing. In psychological science, one of the cool things that we train you to do is know what good research is. Right? And it's not even just a sample, it's how you do the research, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. I want to give you an example of a data set that is probably one of the biggest data sets in learning I have ever seen. A guy by the name of John Hattie from the University of Auckland in New Zealand did this work. He's now in Australia. But he did the mother of all studies on learning. All right? He took 900 meta-analyses. Anybody run into what a meta-analysis is in everyday language? Anybody? Meta-analysis? Yeah, a lot of studies bundled into one work that's been done before. Absolutely. And look at this. He did a meta-analysis of 900 other meta-analyses. So all those studies were already a whole bunch of studies, and he took them and did another level of analysis. His final data set, 50,000 studies, and check that sample size out, people. You're not going to see that in too much research. 240 million students went into that data set. Okay? And what that huge, humongous data set gives us is the ability in one slide to show you the biggest contributing factors to learning. Are you ready for it? The biggest. I gave you a whole bunch: social support, self-efficacy. But here, right now, are the sources that contribute to learning. Quick question. What percent of your learning do you think is up to you? You have 100% to choose from. What percent students do you think is you? Throw out a number. Throw out some numbers.
80.
I hear 80. 80% is you. That's nice. Yeah, what do you think? 50? Anybody else? 60, 70. I hear 60. I hear 60. Anybody go lower? Anybody lower? Anybody lower? No? 40. 40. I hear 40. 40. What do you have there? Oh, 20. Okay, let's not go crazy. So, here's the deal. Ladies and gentlemen, 240 million students in this sample. When you look at learning, the numbers crack down to 50% of the what's called variance in learning is in your hands as students. Hey, you guys, you're not off the hook. Okay? Teachers, the instructors, another 25%, and the rest are a whole bunch of other things that you can think about. Look at that for a second. Look at that for a second. Many of you are going to take your second exam in this week. Okay? When you get that exam score, and you say, man, that class is too tough, or the questions were too hard, remember this 5-year chart. 50% is the effort you put into it. 25% is what we instructors do. It's not that we can't do more, but what this research suggests is even if we do more, if you guys are not putting in your 50%, learning is not going to happen. Okay? It's not going to happen. We are in this together. Don't sit back and say, I've paid my tuition. You guys do your job. Okay? Oh, you laughed? You guys, don't sit back and say, hey, students, do your job. Okay? It goes both ways. Okay? It goes both ways. And I know I'm asking them. But really, I've had too many faculty, not here, not a single one here, but I've had faculty at places tell me, these students, they're just not working. And I go, yeah, but remember, you need to work too. Okay? We are all in this together. Okay? We are all in this together. And that's what the data shows. A significant chunk of data. That's what it shows. All right, 50%. You're thinking that's a whopping percent. What do I do with 50%? Good news, part 3, here's what you do.
Die.
Okay? So here's the thing, right? I'm going to give you, in the final 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of stuff that are tips to learning. I will say right off the bat, some of you are maybe doing this stuff. Good for you. All right? I will also say, I started with my contact information. I will end with my contact information. If you go, hey, that was a cool book, or I want to know more about that, email me. I'll send you all the slides. Okay, I'll send you all the slides. You can look at this stuff at your leisure. Okay? Please don't email me for the summaries that you can then turn into your instructors. Okay? That part I will not do. All right? So here's the deal, right? Let's close with some nice deals about studying. First off, ladies and gentlemen, please, please, please remember learning takes effort. Okay? If you go, this is not easy, it's not supposed to be easy. If it was easy, a college education wouldn't count for so much. Learning takes effort. My favorite analogy is the Rocky movies. I was a boxer in high school, all right? Broke my nose a few times, and every time, I'm so old that every boxing season, a different Rocky movie came out. Okay, so you can really calculate how old I am. And think about Rocky. You may imagine Rocky like that, right? Philadelphia Steps, the final end of the training montage. But then you forget about the beginning of the training montage. You forget when he's like plodding through the market. You forget when he can barely make it up the stairs. Okay? Learning takes effort. Okay? Learning takes effort. For those of you who've seen the Princess Bride, learning is challenging, Your Highness, and anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something. Okay? But really, that's a big deal. All right? I know memes are big right now. I had to throw meme in. All right? Even if I made it myself. That's okay. All right? So, right off the bat, remember, learning takes effort. Number 2, all right? Question early. Don't just sit back and wait for the quiz or the exam. If you're not understanding something, ask the question early. When I teach in ProSci, as you could probably guess, I love data, I love there being evidence for something. And I use the phrase, show me the data, and everybody seems to like it and get it. But then I realized that there are probably folks sitting around going, what the heck does that mean? Right? And if that guy, if I don't have an opportunity for that person to ask that question, I will never know that they've not got it. But so yes, as an instructor, I can put more things into place to make sure you ask the question. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to empower you. If you are not understanding something, don't wait till the exam. Actually, don't wait till after the exam. Okay? Don't wait till after the exam. Go ahead and ask it right away. That's what's important. The syllabus. You've probably heard people say that. Okay? The syllabus is the contract between us, the faculty, and you, the student. A good syllabus has everything in it that you need to know to learn well. I've jazzed mine up a little bit. In faculty, if you're fed up with the same old syllabi, try a visual syllabus. Okay? These are two of the classes I teach. I teach cultural development and health. I teach gods, ghosts, and goblins, understanding belief. And I was bored with the syllabus. I can imagine how you are bored. I was bored. And I teach it. Right? So one fine day, I just sat down and made a new syllabus. The bottom line though, you don't need a good-looking syllabus, if I may say so myself, but you need to read it. Because if you're ever stuck with what do I need to do, read your syllabus. Okay, that's a starting point. Good rule of thumb. Before shooting off that email to a faculty member or a text or however you communicate, read the syllabus. Because you look way better if your email says, in your syllabus it says this, but I don't get it, versus, what's this? Because then the good response back may be, have you read the syllabus? Right? So little things there, make it easier for everybody. Okay? Here's a big level thing though. I mean, those are some little things. Here are some big level things. In psychology, we have a term called self-regulation, right? It's sort of much what it implies. Regulate yourself. Okay, regulate yourself. And when we talk about self-regulation, there's a technical term called metacognition. And really what metacognition is all about is these three things over there. And what you can really do for yourself is all three components. Okay? And I'll be honest with you, these may seem pretty straightforward, but those first two, not enough learners do them. Okay? A lot of folks evaluate. A lot of you, I'm sure a lot of you test yourself. I'm sure a lot of you take quizzes. But those first two things are important as well. I know we're well into the semester, but if you haven't sat down, put all your syllabi side by side and said, what is due when? What do I have to learn? That's something you should do right away. As you look forward to next weekend, as you look forward to this week, you should know right here, right now, as you sit here, what you're doing tonight, what you're doing tomorrow, what you're doing on Wednesday. That's planning. All right? You need to plan, you need to monitor. Don't just plan. A lot of people make plans and they fall by the wayside. And if you don't do anything about it, that's a problem. The Opera House in Sydney, anybody been there? Sydney Opera House? Anyone? Yep, the Opera House in Sydney. All right? They planned to have it be done for $7 million. By the time it was done, it cost $103 million. Because they did not plan for the Sydney Harbor having mud that would sink. Okay? Planning is important. All right? And then monitor and then evaluate. Really, really important stuff. Especially if you've taken an exam already. Consider your mindset. All right? Consider your mindset. Carol Dweck did research on mindset, right? Where she talks about a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Even not without worrying about terms, ask yourself this question. When you got your exam score back, and if it was not great, did you, even for a second, say to yourself, yep, that's me. I was born to do this. Too many people laugh. That's not good. Okay? If you thought that may be a fixed mindset. What research shows us very clearly is that intelligence is not fixed. It doesn't matter what you got in high school. It doesn't matter what you got on the first exam. Intelligence can change. Intelligence can change. And this is so important because if you are sitting here with what's called a fixed mindset, in response to a bad grade, you will actually study less. That's the scary thing about this research. If you are sitting here with a fixed mindset and you do badly, you will study less instead of studying more. Hear it from me right here, right now. Intelligence is not fixed. All right? No bad score should keep you down. Go ahead and change what you're doing. You can make that difference. Don't be stuck with what you've got. Okay? Other little tips. Put aside temptations. Okay? This is sort of a sad week. The person who did this marshmallow study, Walter Mischel, just died. Right? Yeah, if you've heard about the marshmallow study, this is, he put a marshmallow in front of kids and he said, I'm leaving the room, try not to eat it. Okay, and he watched the kids, and some kids, like this one, did whatever they could to not eat it. Okay? And what he found is that the kids who could put away eating, who could not eat the marshmallow, who could delay their gratification, ended up doing better in life. For those of you who read that part, there's a nice little add-on. Much more recently, we know this finding actually is different for people who come from richer backgrounds versus poorer backgrounds. But the basic finding is still there. The delay of gratification is important. And you and I have many opportunities to delay our gratification. All right? Checking your text, checking Facebook. That's gratifying. Okay? There are other things that are gratifying. There's a large category of things that are gratifying, that we easily go to because it feels good. And as long as you can delay that gratification to get your work done, you are much better off. Okay? You are much better off. And it takes some training, it takes some practice, but it's completely possible. Okay? It's completely possible. Other quick things to keep in mind as we wind down. Change your study zones. It's a myth in this literature that you should study in the same place all the time. Okay? Move around. Okay? You know, if you need to take a nap in the library, take a nap, okay? Speaking of naps, anybody know the answer to this question? You have a big test tomorrow. You still have a lot to do. What should you do? Should you stay up late, study, then go to bed? Or go to bed soon, rest, and wake up early? Well, you're nodding for both, so give me one. Yeah. Sorry?
Go to bed, wake up early.
Go to bed, wake up early. The research says, here's what you should do. Study and then go to bed, because the way we are built as human beings, while we sleep, we consolidate memories. Okay? While we sleep, we consolidate memories. So if you have the option, now mind you, you may not have the option, maybe you're not sleeping at all. Well, okay? But here's the deal. When we sleep, we consolidate our memories. That's why general big hello call out for sleep. Sleep's the single best thing you can do. Wow. Just get your sleep. Right? Do what it takes to get your sleep. Sleep in a quiet, dark place. Those distractions. I would bet that a good chunk of you have your phones on your bed or next to you. Right? That chunk of you who have your phones next to you, you are conditioned to wake up when your phone buzzes. There are people who sleep text, and I hope you heard about this, who their phone will buzz while they are sleeping. They, in a semi-conscious state, wake up, respond to the text, go back to sleep, have no recollection of doing it. That's how much your phone next to you interferes with your sleep. Try not to do it, okay? Try not to do it. So, yeah, change your study zones. Actually, by moving around your study zones, you are actually keeping yourself a little bit more alert, because you're not habituating to that situation. We get used to places, all right? We are designed to get used to things that are remaining the same. Change up your study zones. Other little quick things. Somebody tells you to watch a video. How do you boost your learning from it? Ask questions about it. Now, here's where we faculty can come in. If you're making folks watch something, right? I know some folks are going to watch Crash tomorrow. Hopefully there's some questions ahead of that. And I know, knowing that, I know there are. That's what helps you remember stuff better. If somebody has not given you questions, ask yourself, what should I be getting from this? Automatically, when we view that, that makes a difference. Last big chunk of stuff. These are the 10 ways that students often study. Okay? The 10 ways. I know some of these may not be that straightforward, but pay attention to especially the words that you understand, and I'll drop the words or draw attention to the words that you really need to watch out for. What Danilowski, the researcher and colleagues did was they took all these ways from cognitive science and they looked at all the research. And what I want to draw your attention to is that column over there. For each of those things that students do, they assigned a value, high, moderate, or low utility. And take a look at the stuff that is low utility. Highlighting your textbook, low utility. Using study time to just reread the text, low utility. Okay? Many of us do that naturally, but cognitive science says not the way to use your time. You will notice there are only two things that are high utility. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the two things as we close here. Those are the two things you need to do to really learn and cultivate your learning. Okay? Practice testing and distributed practice. In everyday English, test yourself on the material. Okay? I'm going to share something with you that shocked me when I first learned it, but I'm going to share it with you. If you take a test on the material, if you have a textbook that has quizzes, for example, if you take a quiz on that material, wait for it, even before reading the book, when you read the book, you'll actually learn it better. Because apparently taking that quiz gives your brain the structure to take in that new information. Think about that. Taking a quiz before you've even read the material helps you organize that material better. And then it just gets better from there. The more you can test yourself on the material, the better off you are. Okay? Distributed practice, that's the big thing we faculty try to get you guys to do all the time, and it's really hard. In everyday English, spread out your studying. Spread out your studying. See point A above. If you plan well, you can spread out your studying. If you go, whoops, I have a test tomorrow, game over. Okay, there's no spreading out. But if you can help it, spread out your studying. Really, really, really important thing. Okay? I have one last warning before we close. When you study, can I borrow your book? When you study, beware of what's called the curse of knowledge. Have you watched some people do flashcards? Let's pretend this is your flashcard. Okay? They go, do I know this? The quick flip. Right? Right? Anybody do that? Come on, fess up. How many of you do that? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, what we now know is that if we ask ourselves, do I know this? And the content is in front of us, our brain is overconfident and wrong. That's referred to as the curse of knowledge. Okay? If you are ever asking yourself, do I know this stuff? Do not do it with your book in front of you. Close it, put it down, then try and recall what's in there. That's the true measure, or the better measure. I don't know if there's a true measure. That's the better measure. Watch out, watch out, watch out for the curse of knowledge. All right, how much more can we squeeze in here? Good news, not much more. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a whole bunch of ways for you to cultivate your learning. Hope you picked up a whole bunch of good stuff. Thank you for being a super audience. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Burning thoughts. Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Does the learning different, like, I don't know how to word it, but can culture be a factor on how we actually take in the information and stuff?
Yeah, so great question. Can culture influence how we take in information, right? There are actually 3, 4, 5 different ways that the short answer is yes. Let me give you a little bit of the larger answer. Different cultural groups study in different ways. So for example, one of the earliest studies done on calculus looked at why are African American students not doing as well in calculus? And that they found that the way the course was set up for them to study had them doing it individually. Whereas apparently when they were put together in study groups, automatically scores went up. Because that was a more cultural way to approach something. Right? Just tip of the iceberg, but yeah, that's so absolutely yes. Now, in the big scheme of things, all the stuff I said in the last 15 minutes is probably more important than culture. Culture is on, that's why you'll notice I didn't put it on that predictors of learning. It's there, but it doesn't, there are much more things to tackle first, I would say. Yeah, go ahead.
In the big meta-analysis study that had like a lot of students,
Yep.
were there any of the students that had like disability or something, and did it affect the study in any way?
Great question. So the question was, did the big meta-analysis include students with disabilities? So the students with disabilities that was controlled for in that study. So that big, as you can guess, the 50%, 25, it's really this very big cutting up of the data, lots of nuances in there, and when you break it down to different economic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, then you see variances in what the data is. a good thing to keep in mind is that big picture, what's the big blocks that are accounted for? But otherwise, absolutely, absolutely. Anybody from this side? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So the previous slide that talked about different study methods, did it talk about the utility of combining those different study methods?
Great question. So the question was, if you didn't hear it, was there anything about combining? In that particular study, no. Okay? Actually, most of those studies are done with essentially one of those techniques. Now, as you can guess, naturally, you're going to use more than one. And actually, I did a study where I actually took those 10, looked for a combination, didn't find any evidence for one combination being any better than the other. But you're right, you would think, right? It would. I will tell you this. Big thing to keep in mind. I told you about the fear of knowledge with the flashcards. And here's a big thing to keep in mind. Many students, especially in introductory classes, think, hey, I've got this big stack of flashcards. I'm doing well. Your question reminds me of a very important thing to share with all of you. No one study strategy by itself is probably a good idea. Okay? Studying keywords, the research shows that students use keywords. They look at the bolded terms, you look at keywords, you look at the bolded terms, and quite rightly you go, these are important, let me focus on them. Let me make a stack of flashcards. I have data that shows that when you make too many flashcards, if that's the only way you're studying, it's actually going to hurt your exam score versus helping. So it's that balance that becomes really, really important. Okay? There was another question there. Anybody this side? You guys good on this side? Let's go back to, yeah, go ahead.
If I'm studying for like multiple subjects in like a study session,
Yeah.
how long should I wait in between?
Oh, super question. Super question. The question was, if I'm studying for different subjects, how long should I wait? Actually, not at all. Right? I mentioned the top two things there was repeat testing and distributed practice. Third up, if we had time to go into 3, but now you've given me the opportunity, the third strategy that's showing promise is something that's technically called interleaving. All right? Which is actually studying something, then studying something else, then going back to the first thing, but interweaving what you study, because again, by virtue of creating those compartments in your head, it helps you retain the stuff better. Okay? So interestingly enough, now don't get me wrong, if you need a break, take a break. If you're exhausted, if you're fatigued, take a break, take a nap. But otherwise, interleaving, really super strategy. Yeah. How about one more, right? A couple more? Do we have a couple more, John? Yes? Yes, okay, yes. Is that a hand? No. Okay, yes.
You mentioned self-efficacy being something that influences learning heavily. And you're also talking about the overconfidence and knowledge. How much do those overlap?
So the great question, what about the overlap between self-efficacy and overconfidence? And when we measure those, or when it's measured in cognitive studies, you can actually tease those out really well. Because the actual measures for those two tends to be, for self-efficacy tends to be, how much do you believe, or how well do you think you could succeed at this particular exam, or task, or subject, or whatever. The overconfidence tends to ask the question, how confident are you that you know this? So notice that subtle difference there. It's how confident are you that you know this? Fear of knowledge says if I'm looking at the material, my confidence that I know it is exaggerated. Does confidence and self-efficacy, are they associated? Absolutely. But the way they're measured helps us tease those apart. Okay? But you're absolutely right. They're in that ballpark, and one will definitely tend to influence the other. Right? People with very low self-efficacy are not confident that they know stuff. Okay? And sometimes you see some funky interactions. Yeah?
Okay, is a 30 to 45 minute nap actually good between like study time?
So, is a 30 to 40 minute nap good between study times? I will tell you this, there's so much individual differences between us as human beings that I don't believe there's a definitive answer to that question, because some of us can do, I cannot power nap. I cannot any nap for that matter. I just don't nap, because if I nap, I'm just groggy and wasted. Okay? So that's very, very much an individual difference question. I will tell you this, that kind of break, remember what I said about it consolidating your memories? If you are tired, and most college students are tired all the time, right? If you are tired, taking a nap may be more productive than you just soldiering on and doing stuff there. Yeah. Anything else? You guys ready to just rock this semester? All right.
We'll have at it. Go sign things.